wait in a second. Sorry, sir.
That's all right. Just makes it easier to edit because there's like this big blank.
Right.
What?
Oh,
Always yelling at me.
I didn't even see you there.
Actually, you were kind of calm and quiet
Kinda hiding.
yesterday, Keith. I'm like shocked. You must have had an off
What do
day. You were on your best behavior yesterday.
Okay, let's go.
Do you want to try to give us some sort of cue here? I mean, we're gonna
I don't
be
know
right
what that
after
is.
So we're gonna be.
You get- Oh, okay.
So we'll be ready
Alright.
for you.
Are we having Detective Lieutenant Chris Christina?
Is Chris here?
Yeah, Chris is here.
Is he?
And what about Beth?
Chris, come on up.
And Beth Murphy?
Detective?
Hey, Chris. How are you?
Okay, a little closer. How's that? Okay, great. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us here at the H. Lee Dennison Building for an important announcement. I'm joined by my colleagues in the Suffolk County Police Department and government here, the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, Jerry Hart. I want to thank her and all the officials in the police department for their work. We have our Chief of Department, Stu Cameron, who's going to be saying a few words in just a moment. Of course, our first Deputy Commissioner, Jim Skopek. We're also joined by Suffolk County Police Department Detective Lieutenant Chris Corsino, and from the Department of Labor, Licensing, and Consumer Affairs, we have our Senior Deputy Commissioner, Beth Murphy. So there is an alarming trend that is occurring right now on Long Island where criminals are targeting residents through scams in order to swindle them out of money. With the rise in sophistication of technology, we've seen a steady increase in telephone and digital scams, which often go ignored or unreported. But for the victims, it can mean the difference between retirement and bankruptcy. Simply put, this is the 21st century definition of highway robbery. Thieves can pick up the phone halfway across the world and use automated recordings to fraudulently obtain one's personal or financial information. And oftentimes, unfortunately, these schemes are directed towards the most vulnerable among us. Senior citizens, or those who have difficulty with the English language. The fictitious stories that are concocted can be incredibly persuasive and clever, and they all have one goal in mind: call as many people as possible until you find an individual who takes the bait. For them, for these criminals, it's a numbers game. Today we're going to outline a number of such scams. But before we do so, I'd like to take a moment to play an audio recording that was sent to a homeowner in Port Washington in Nassau County. In the recording, it demands payment or the local cops will come to arrest her.
Hours. And once it gets expired after that, you will be taken under custody by the local cops, as there are 4 serious allegations pressed on your name at this moment. We would request you to get back to us, so that we can discuss about this case, before taking any legal action against you. The number to reach us is 408-675-5521. I repeat, 408-675-5521. Thank you.
Now imagine that you receive a call like that the cops are going to come to your home and arrest you. Imagine what an impact that has on, particularly if you're targeting, as these criminals do, senior citizens and those who are more vulnerable to scams like this. And with social media today, the ability for people to find out information about you and to use that information against you as they are trying to scam you has never been greater. And, you know, these criminals are smart, they adapt, and they are using that personal information that is available on the internet, on social media, and they are using it to scam people. So our message to the public, and to a great extent, it is very challenging, very difficult to hold people legally accountable, particularly when you're dealing with individuals who are out of country, who are using different technology to mask their identity. Calls are coming in from all different places around the globe. It can be very difficult. The best way that we can help residents avoid being scammed is to get the information out to them. And that's why the police department is very focused on this, as well as the Department of Labor and Consumer Affairs, getting the information out to residents. Do not give personal financial information over the phone when somebody's calling without having verified that this is a legitimate call. You know, if you get a call like this, call the company. There is no legitimate company that will not provide you with information to protect you from being scammed. Or call a friend or a relative, a loved one, before thinking about giving out your personal or financial information, or certainly giving money to any individuals. But unfortunately, we have seen a steady rise in these types of scams. These criminals are targeting the elderly and the vulnerable, and we're going to do everything we can to get the message out to help protect people from these types of scams. And with that, I want to ask our Chief of Department, Chief Cameron, to come forward to talk a little bit about some of the enforcement on this issue. Chief?
Thank you, sir. I'm going to speak briefly about telephone scams. We see a variety of scams. We see in-person scams. I'm going to address specifically telephone scams. And as a county executive said, one of the most distasteful things about these scams is they target the elderly and the vulnerable, people who have limited English proficiency, but primarily the elderly. Last year, we saw 69 telephone scams that were successful where people actually paid out money, and 40 of the victims were elderly. And there is an escalation in these. We saw 63 telephone scams, successful ones in 2017, and 69 in 2018, so they are increasing in frequency. But they basically can be categorized into 2 overall broad categories. One where the scammer excuse me, alleges that the victim did something wrong, whether they didn't pay their taxes or they didn't pay the utility bill, and they'll escalate with the threats where they'll get to the point where, for example, an IRS scam, they may say, if you don't pay immediately, there's going to be an arrest warrant issued for you and someone's going to come to your house and arrest you. Or with utility scam, which is very common, your power is going to be turned off. So the elderly get convinced that that negative consequence is going to happen and immediate payment is necessary. The other type of scam is where a relative is in some type of dire need. And that's where it's really distasteful with the elderly. Very often it's a grandchild that they care very much about. They may have been arrested, allegedly. They may have been involved in an automobile accident that they need to make payment for. They may have been kidnapped. We saw a lot of kidnapping scams where they're asking for a ransom. So they're basically playing upon the heartstrings of the elderly person for the grandchild. And really, some of the common telltale signs: don't be convinced with your caller ID. You can spoof caller ID. Even though your caller ID may say the call is coming from the IRS, there are ways to spoof that. Quite frequently, they'll ask for payment in gift cards. No governmental agency is ever going to ask you to pay in a gift card. They'll ask you to buy the gift cards, scratch it off, and read them the numbers, and they will drain the gift cards down. The only thing that you can do with gift cards, especially for an electronics store, is buy electronics, and I can guarantee you the IRS does not want you to pay them in a commodity where they can buy electronics. That's not valid. So I can assure you, if it's a member of law enforcement or if it's somebody from the IRS or someone from a governmental agency that's asking you for something immediately, they're never going to mind if you ask them you want to confirm their identity. Ask for their name and their callback number, then look up for a legitimate number for the IRS or for whatever police department and try and confirm that that is in fact who the person is. So you know, it's distasteful, and the police department is here to help. If you receive one of these calls, by all means, please call us and we'll work with you to try and resolve the issue. Thank you.
And I think that's an important point. This is a very underreported crime. Oftentimes people are embarrassed about being scammed and don't report the crime, or they ignore the calls. You know, they may not be vulnerable to the scam. It's important that people alert the police department and alert the government about these particular scams, so that, you know, we can get the word out, we can get the message out about what is happening there. And this is tax season now, so it's also very important that people are aware of that IRS scam that is popular among these criminals, and that is that the IRS is calling and then demanding money. So people should be particularly aware now during the tax season that the use of the IRS by these criminals as part of their scam is a common thing. With that, any questions?
What is this Letgo scam? What is this?
Do you want to finish it?
Yep. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I wanted to bring to your attention a pattern of 5 robberies that we've seen utilizing the Letgo app. So they are all within the confines of the 7th Precinct. The first occurred in August of 2018, and the last occurred actually on New Year's Eve. As you probably know, Letgo is an electronic marketplace where people buy and sell different goods. In this instance, 4 out of the 5 were there to purchase a telephone. 1 was there to sell a telephone. In each instance, each victim was robbed of currency. So in every case, we're going to tell people, if you're going to utilize an app like Letgo, please do it in a public place. If you're going to agree to meet in a public place. Meet during daylight hours, and don't go by yourself. Those are all very important points that we want to bring up. We also want to make sure that if you're utilizing an app such as Letgo, make sure that you're verifying the seller on that app. If there's no information from prior sellers that are talking about this particular individual, you want to be suspicious of that. And if there is an instance where you do feel that you've been scammed, please don't hesitate to reach out to 911 and call us.
So how many victims have been scammed? Do you have a count yet?
So on the Letgo, so we've had 5 instances, 5 victimizations on that.
What exactly did they happen? You mentioned the precinct, but what can you...
Yeah, so let me give you the details on each one. Our first, again, occurred on August 16th of 2018, and that was at 9:51 p.m. in front of 156 Mayfield Drive in Mastic Beach. In that instance, the victim was selling an iPhone on Letgo, and the suspect contacted the victim and stated that he'd buy the phone if that victim agreed to meet him at that location. They met there. The suspect took the phone, said he had to ask his mother for something, and disappeared behind 156 Mayfield. Next was, again, in front of 156 Mayfield, in Mastic Beach on November 9th at 8:10 p.m. In that instance, the two victims waited in their vehicle. The two suspects arrived in their vehicle, approached the victim's car. The suspects showed the victim a phone and asked to see $100. The suspects then displayed a knife and demanded money. One of the suspects put a knife to the victim's throat, and the suspect stole the money and fled in a gray sedan. So we have a picture here that indicates the gray sedan. It's a little bit difficult to make out.
This is from what date?
So that's November 9th.
November 9th.
Yes.
And those pictures are from the November 9th incident?
No, the pictures are from let's see, I'm sorry, New Year's Eve. And I'll get to that one. Let me just go through. November 30th at 1:56 p.m. was the next incident. Again, the suspect asked to meet in front of 156 Mayfield Drive to purchase an iPhone just before midnight. The suspect showed the victim the cell phone in a box and accepted $400. The man then told the victim he had to go get a SIM card, and the man walked towards the home and fled to the rear of the property. It's important that you know that the residents of 156 Mayfield Drive are not believed to be involved in these crimes, and it appears that that location was used simply because the suspects could easily cut through that yard to an adjacent road behind. In the next incident, at 2:04 p.m. on December 8th, a victim agreed to meet the suspect to purchase an iPhone on Mastic Road, about a third of a mile west of the previous incident locations. In this instance, 3 men forcibly stole $350 and fled on foot. And our latest case, on New Year's Eve at 12:09 p.m. This occurred at the Mastic-Shirley Long Island Railroad Station, and this is the picture that you see. In this case, the victim gave the suspects $500, but was then pushed to the ground. When the victim attempted to follow the suspect, a second man appeared and threatened to shoot him if he continued to follow. The suspects are all described as black, between 5'6" and 5'8" tall, with a thin build, in their late teens to early 20s. Fortunately, no one was injured in these cases, but the fact that the suspects made threats and displayed knives is concerning. Detectives have been in contact with the Letgo administrators to obtain available information about the users, as they were not previously verified on Letgo to ensure authenticity. Are there any additional questions?
Those are part of the 69 number that you had named, or that this is separate?
69 is phone scams only.
Yeah,
Okay.
this would be separate.
Just one more question. In Nassau recently, there was a couple of stories where there was one woman who they asked for actually cash, an incredible amount, $45,000, the scammer. Are any of these incidents, I know you mentioned gift cards, but are there any where cash was actually handed over?
The greatest loss in a phone scam for us was $800,000.
How much?
$800,000.
And how was it? It was.
I don't have the details on how the actual monetary transfer occurred, but that was the greatest value and loss for a phone scam for us.
When did that happen?
Like one person?
You had that incident information?
Yeah, I can get that for you. I don't have it handy.
It happened this year?
Did it happen this year, someone asked?
It happened either 2017 or 2018.
Are these people being, I apologize if you said this, but are they being targeted individually, or are they robocalls, or how are they figuring out who they're going to call?
Some are targeted individually. In some cases, as the county executive said, they'll do advanced research on the people, either on social media or, disturbingly, in some cases, they'll read obituaries to get family members' names and target them. Very often, they just repeatedly call people until they get someone that's amenable to being involved in a scam.
And the number they're calling, is that phone traceable or not traceable?
Very often, as the county executive said, the scams are out of state or they come from overseas. Very often, the phone calls are bounced to what is referred to as the Tor network, which the phone calls are basically untraceable because they're bounced through countries overseas that won't honor our subpoena power. So the calls are very hard to follow up on. So the greatest tip is just to never give money to somebody that calls you in an unsolicited manner. If your power bill is paid and your taxes are paid, there's no reason to think that you're going to be arrested for not paying either one of those.
So the number, like on the message that you played, that's his actual telephone number, but you don't have access to get because it bounces around.
Correct.
Commissioner Hart, the Letgo scam, you believe the suspects were involved in the same suspects in all 5?
That's correct.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Who sets up a meeting at midnight? It seems like a
Right.
If a deal seems too good to be true, you know,
Probably is.
if a deal seems too good to be true, it is. And, you know, people need to be very skeptical and use their common sense as well. And as the commissioner said, you know, take ordinary precautions. Meet in a public place. You know, do not go somewhere where you may be vulnerable to an attack like this. And if the person on the other side is unwilling to do that, that should be a red flag to you that you shouldn't proceed with the deal.
Who should people call if they feel they've been a victim or if they want to get more information on the Letgo scam?
So in particular, if anybody feels they have information on the Letgo scam that they want to give to us, they can call anonymously to our Crime Stoppers line, which is 1-800-220-TIPS.
And if they feel they've been a victim, they call the same number?
Yes, and then of course, you know, 911 is always available.
Additionally, there's an entire section on our department website devoted to scams that we unfortunately had to keep adding additional scams to.
So in each of the 5 instances, it was a phone transaction?
Correct.
And they stole money that the person was going to pay for the phone?
Right, so in 4 of the cases, the victim showed up to purchase a phone, so they took the money and obviously didn't complete the transaction. In the first instance in August, the victim showed up to sell a phone, and in that instance, the subject took the phone and left.
And how much money did they get away with altogether?
Do we know tally?
I don't have a specific tally, but generally it was about a $500 deals each time.
Right.
Several $1,000s.
Yeah.
I understand that education is obviously very important for these issues, but is the county exploring any legislative options or anything, I guess, going forward proactively for
Well, there are laws on the books right now. This is, you know, a question of enforcement. And because of the difficulties associated with enforcing some of these, it really is a question of education. And what we are looking at are ways we can continue to inform the public, because what we know is these criminals will consistently engage in this behavior. And without consistently alerting the public to these existing scams and new ones that develop, we are going to have people who are vulnerable and who are victimized.
I'm sorry. Nassau and Suffolk have those at the precincts, the property swap locations. You guys are familiar with that. Do you think that's a better idea than meeting someone like randomly on the street?
Yeah, but I don't want to give a false sense of security. I mean, if you're in the precinct parking lot, we don't have eyes on every piece of the parking lot, so I don't want to have the impression that that's a place that you know, is completely available. So, I mean, if somebody feels they want to go into the precinct and conduct, again, that's an option. But always a public place, always daylight hours, and don't be by yourself.
Those property swap locations are not up and running, I guess, or recommended, or?
So we don't have an official
Do we have
position
one?
on that.
I thought we saw signs.
No.
There's one at the second. I know there's one at the jail in Yaphank, like in the parking lot where the sheriff's booth is. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, the sheriff's? Okay,
But
okay.
there's one in the second precinct in Nassau. I don't know.
The second precinct in Nassau.
In Nassau, okay, yeah,
I don't know if there are any in Suffolk County.
yeah, no, no.
Does anyone ever get
Thank you,
their
guys.
money back, just with the scams, sorry guys, does anyone ever get their money back, or is it, with these phone scams, it's usually gone, right?
It's usually gone, but occasionally we can recover the money. That has happened.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I have one last question on
Take a
Letgo.
picture.
So they found all of their victims through this app, Letgo?
Correct, correct.
You want to show me what this is?